Welcome to Poetry Club. Today we discuss understanding poetry, and we attempt to do so by reading Rita Dove's poem, Exit.
When I was studying for my comprehensives, I realized that I had never had a course that included Yeats. And so I decided I was going to try and deal with Yeats by reading some Yeats every night when I got home. I'd spend an hour on Yeats. And of course, I then knew Yeats' poetry very, very well. I believe I've read all of Yeats, and I know he was writing 100 years ago now, but there's not, that doesn't happen to me in anywhere in any of his poems that I don't understand at least the surface thought. And I realize that people care less about that who are writing these days. Other people are not writing the kind of poetry that I'm writing. I know that. I still, I'm repeating myself now. I value that thought progression and then the way poetic technique can intensify it and give us layers of meaning.
Something triggered you to study Yeats, and we don't know what that was, but there was something in the poetry, or maybe you felt like it was going to be a question asked for your PhD that interested you. You liked it, and then you digged further. So I feel like that's a measure for all of us. If something interests us and we find there's more to unearth, then we move forward. But that could be different for everybody.
Well, yes. I'll just toss this in. When I was at Bellevue, one of our visiting scholars was a man named Nawang Dorji, who's the educational advisor to the Dalai Lama. The Dalai Lama named his children. He's the head of the Tibetan Children's Village. And I got to go to lunch with him every week or dinner because I was the vice president. And he left me one of the Tibetan ceremonial scarves. There's a name for it. You all might know. As a gift. And I knew he was going to give me something. And so I looked around my place, and there's a volume of Yeats I bought in the 1960s that I signed over to him and said I carried this book with me my adult life. I mean, that says something, I think, also about what Yeats meant to me.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So I'm willing to work and struggle with the poems, but there's a point at which I think, Robert Browning made this famous remark. He wrote Sordello early in his career, and most people would say it's incomprehensible. And somebody said to Browning late in his life, what was Sordello about? And Browning said, when I wrote it, God and I knew what it was about. Now only God knows.
Oh, I like that.
I've told that before, but I think it pertains. So, to get back to the impenetrable discussion.
Yeah.
All of Rita Dove's poems I enjoyed reading. And I could make sense out of large blocks of them, but there are points at which the whole poem didn't coalesce for me. And I think that's a more accurate description of my own experience with a couple of the poems. Not all. I mean, we've already discussed a couple of them.
Goodness.
Well, do we?
This whole discussion is certainly feels to me part of why so many people are afraid to step their toe into the world of poetry, fearing that they won't understand, or why there's a bias against poets as being la-di-da, effete, blah, blah, fill in all of those words.
Yeah.
As in, why can't they just say what they mean to say?
And I wouldn't even say that it's a fear of poetry. I think it's just like, why would I, walk into that web of whatever, and I don't even understand it. There's a great documentary right now on Jackie Collins and her life. And even her agent says there are people that are true word artists, and she was not one of them. He says she wrote very plainly, and you knew what was happening without a shadow of a doubt. And
and sold gazillion copies.
She's the smoothie of literature. You don't have to chew anything.
Beautiful.
Do you like that? I like that.
Yeah. What a metaphor.
Do you have to chew poetry?
Yeah.
Some of it.
Over the years, I taught poetry for a lot of years. I had a lot of students bring their poems to me and say, "What do you think?"
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes, on the one hand, there's always a temptation to say, I was very careful with them. But if you were going to be just brutally honest in some cases, you'd say, don't give up the day job. But I never had a student hand me a poem that I couldn't honestly be encouraging.
Mm-hmm.
But some of them just defied any real understanding.
Well, I think that's part of being 18 and 19 and 20 years old, the pretentiousness of the intellectual, the overwritten. Sometimes you just need to say to an 18-year-old, go out and get 10 years of life and then come back and write that same poem.
I might add that 10 or 12 instances, I would guess, over the years, students brought me a poem that they had written and they were scared. And so they were really saying to me, I don't know what to make of this. I wrote this up last night and, I don't know what I'm doing or if I should keep doing it.
Nice. But they shared it with you. That's kind of like a close encounter that those discovery moments when there's an observation and you put it down on paper in an artistic way, and it's kind of like a relationship or a close encounter with the unseen world. That's what, does that mean maybe that person, I don't know if they'll develop it, but when I hear somebody say, I don't know if this is poetry or not, but would you look at it? Those are folks that I think are on the cusp of doing something with that kind of that poetry spirit. They have a natural gift perhaps, but at least of observation and of words. But are you going to do something with it? And do you want to do something with it? Yeah. Is that how you want to express yourself to others in your life and people and strangers?
Yeah, there's a great risk in all of that, especially with the fact that if you choose poetry, you can't give up your day job.
You cannot. It is a labor of love.
Exactly.
Like what 1% make money, Money that pays the rent. every
doubt that
month.
it's even 1% for poetry for poets. It might be for novelists, maybe.
Oh, I don't find that there's much challenge in, let's just say, a CEO of a large company making, 7 figures, 8 figures, and says, "Oh, and I'm also a poet." It's like, eh. Whatever.
I was reading a book once about Emily Carr, the Canadian painter. And they're talking about this particular year in her life that was very successful. She had exhibitions in major museums and art galleries around the country, and she taught here and she did that. And they're talking about, just how much recognition she was getting. And then he said, and she sold a painting. It was like, she sold a painting.
Yeah. President Bush also sells paintings, and he was president.
Interesting.
Are we going to talk about any more about Rita Dove? Or are we going to jump into Ron's quote from Hirschfeld? Boy, that killed me.
Hanging in the air.
Oh, geez.
Maybe we're done with Dove.
I think we looked at the Beethoven poem was the last one we looked at last time, but I may not be remembering right.
Yeah, that's the last one we looked at.
Well, what's a poem that matches what we've been discussing? We're talking about being able to relate to a poem. Is that what we're discussing?
That's part of it, certainly.
Katie's pitch is jumping off the page at me right now, but it's on page 9. Is this something we can all relate to?
Are you making a suggestion about one we look at?
Also, yes. And then also exit. Exit is obscure, and I do not know what it's about.
There you go.
There we go. I look at that and I go, okay.
Let's do exit.
Okay. Who would like to read it? Betty, you're good at reading these days, but who would like to read it? If there's someone who wants to read it.
Well, I can give it a cold reading.
Okay,
Exit.
for us.
Okay. Just when hope withers, the visa is granted. The door opens to a street like in the movies, clean of people, of cats, except it is your street you are leaving. A visa has been granted provisionally, a fretful word. The windows you have closed behind you are turning pink, doing what they do every dawn. Here, it's gray. The door to the taxicab waits. This suitcase, the saddest object in the world. Well, the world's open. And now, through the windshield, the sky begins to blush as you did when your mother told you what it took to be a woman in this life. Oh, my.
Oh. So hearing you read that, Betty, I'm thinking this is a breakup poem. But
and by that you mean?
Is a what poem?
A breakup poem.
Oh, I thought you said break out, and I didn't know. But
no, breakup.
Breakup.
It might be. You could read it like that.
But she's overseas and she has to get a visa. Something has ended.
Well, I don't know that she's really been overseas. Well, overseas metaphorically, but maybe not necessarily physically.
Oh.
This is kind of an example of what I was talking about when we got started, that we don't even really know exactly what the situation is. Who's leaving? What kind of opportunity does the visa present? Is it an escape? Why does it restore hope? Just when hope withers, the visa is granted. Like a rescue is made, but we speculate about the whole situation and can really only speculate. And that the last four lines, we look for closure there in every other poem. Now through the windshield, the sky begins to blush as you did when your mother told you what it took to be a woman in this life. Who is the you?
Yeah.
And yet there's something so compelling about the language.
Is the you the reader and the speaker?
Mm.
I read it as speaker,
Yeah,
not me reader.
right. It could be both. Yeah, I kind of see it. A general comment.
So is this a self-reflection then? Is that what you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
It could be. And it could be the saying goodbye and going out into a more open world, but you only have the suitcase, which is the saddest object in the world. It's saying goodbye. And maybe to be a woman in this life, you have to say goodbye to certain important elements in your own being.
Okay.
Oh.
But look at the middle of the poem. This is not really in response to what you just said, Betty, but to what we were saying before, that the windows you have closed behind you are turning pink, doing what they do every dawn. Here it's gray. So you got two people in two different places in two different situations. The door to the taxi cab waits, the suitcase, the saddest object in the world. Why? That thought doesn't go anywhere. And then why is the suitcase a sad object? It makes me want to know.
Subject of having to leave, it's sad. We generally think of suitcases as the beginning of something. I'm traveling, I'm going to see Paris for the first time, whatever. But it can be, I just got kicked out the door.
I don't understand the part except it is your street you are leaving. What is that noise?
Somebody's sawing.
Yeah.
That's my man Daryl is doing work on my kitchen.
Oh,
Somebody
okay.
is sawing.
Tell him to make you a cobbler while he's in there.
And cook some coffee, please.
Yes. Enough for 5, please.
He's sanding.
Oh, yeah, I can hear it.
Well,
I also wonder whether or not the visa is literally a government document, or is it just an open door? Is it just, okay, leave if you must. I give you my permission. Go ahead, leave.
There's so many unanswered questions in this, and it doesn't seem like we can really figure it out. I want her to step in and say, no, this is what I meant. She's not going to.
And that's kind of what I was talking about in the beginning. Impenetrable is too strong a word because there are clues, but we don't know what it all adds up to.
It's still enigmatic.
Good word.
Mm.
And I think life can be enigmatic as well.
Mm.
So I appreciate the elements that if we're willing to just put ourselves into those times when we have withered hope, and for example, the visa is granted. Oh, if we all get a vaccine, we'll be able to travel again. I know that's not what she meant, but we can apply it to the door opening, and it's like a movie, except it's our street, and we're leaving home.
Mm.
Yeah.
And so that's, I just think it's telling about what life is like for an awful lot of people. And especially because I do think she holds up the place of speaking for women of color and women in general, and how challenging it is a world to live in.
Well, it's definitely hard, I think, to walk away from a relationship. And it looks like this was this involved some difficulty for her, because she was waiting for that visa. She was waiting. The visa to me indicates timing. There's something she's waiting for, some sort of an approval, maybe enough money to get her own place. I don't know, a ticket home, something. But, when we were studying Margaret Atwood and we didn't understand her poetry, we were able to look at her biography and figure some things out. And for example, when we were reading one of her poems about where she walks in on her husband with her best friend, that was an event that really happened, and we could look it up. Where did we find it? On I think in an interview she talks about it. But maybe I'm expecting too much. I want this poem to tell me what is happening right in these lines, and I don't want to do any research.
Well, I don't think there's much to research, because you could look up all kinds of things and still not have the answer, because I'm not clear on what she is talking about. And
we know what the words mean and we know what the sentences mean, but we don't know how it coheres. Mm-hmm. And I can't, like when Betty was saying that we get these various suggestions. Well, yeah, I read the lines, and the reason that the lines are compelling for me is I can say to myself, well, I've been there. I know what that feels like. Yeah. I can associate it, but we expect a work of art to have its own integral, its own integrity, and the parts to cohere. And Betty, and everyone, what is the standard we hold ourselves to? If we write something that has this level of, I really like Linda's word, enigma in it, are we willing to hand it off and say, what do you think to people?
Do it every day.
Well, I think about reading Billy Collins, and always through the first reading, there's some kind of superficial, oh, I get that, I understand that. Mm-hmm. And then you can dig a little deeper. This one, I don't think there's clarity of meaning on first reading. It's more like stupefying and having to go back through and try and figure it out. I'm not against that, but it's a gray experience for me. Nothing's turning pink.
Mm.
Is it enough, though, if a poem is evocative of feeling? Because I have an atmospheric feeling about this poem, about the sadness of the leaving. Anyhow, it brings up emotions. Is that enough? Even if I
Maybe there's some
know exactly what door or where the cab is going or any of the stuff.
I believe that's a current trend right now where, just put some really cool phrases together, put some couplets together, and but don't tell me where they are, what time it is, and what color it is. Just put all these cool words together and give me some feels. And maybe I am a literary snob. I want a little bit more from my poetry than just feels. I don't just want to go, ooh, it's a mood. You've created this mood. It's like, I need more than a mood. But that's me.
But to be able to create a mood is really quite an accomplishment, I think.
Yeah. I follow some concept art folks on Instagram, and they specialize in mood. They, the moment you meet your enemy, or usually there's fantasy or sci-fi type photos, and the moment of discovery type of a mood, and all this. And so to do that with colors on basically a two-dimensional surface, I think that's definitely a talent.
Well, I think she might have done it in this poem. She's telling us, you are leaving. It's dawn. It's pink. The colors are changing from pink to green. To gray. And then to the person turning a sense of blushing pink. As the world opens in an unknown way. We don't know what the future is. She's just been given an option, a visa.
We don't know the circumstances.
World. But she has to leave her home, or what was home for her at that moment, and bring what was her suitcase along.
I think it's telling that the title is Exit. The title isn't Journey or Future or Wander.
Yeah.
The emphasis is Exit.
Yeah, there's lots of clues.
And to me, that's the mood. The street looks the same, the sun's doing what it always does, but I have to take that suitcase, which is the saddest thing I've ever seen, because I just packed up my bits and pieces of.
Ron, what were you going to say?
Yeah.
And I think, I can conjure up times in my life when it has felt like that. I am just stepping out of a door that I will never be able to go back into. This is done, and it's sad. Or scary, or lots of things, but here I think it's sad.
Yeah.
We've probably all done a lot of leaving in our lives. I certainly have. I've moved across country. I've lived 20 or 30 different places. And so we know what it feels like to leave a place that you called home. And it's a whole set of mixed feelings. You look back at the place that you called home, and on the one hand, you're moving ahead, and usually you're progressing, but there's also this whole context you're leaving behind. Mm-hmm. And for me, the poem coheres to the extent that these are the circumstances and the thoughts and impressions about leaving a place. But we don't know any more about the situation than that.
Mm-hmm. And the idea of visa might be the metaphor.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. It's just,
It's not biography, it's metaphor.
Even if I don't understand the whole of the poem, and I think I've gotten some more clarity about it from these last few minutes of discussion, There are also lines, if I just saw them somewhere, not as part of the poem, that I could take away and think, oh, that's really good, such as, through the windshield, the sky begins to blush, as you did when your mother told you what it took to be a woman in this life. That's a very powerful image that I can relate to. And so is this suitcase the saddest object in the world. And the door opens to a street like in the movies, clean of people, of cats. That's so ordinary, so beautifully ordinary. So even if I have some perplexity about the specifics of the poem, or the poem as a whole resonating with me, I've got some lines that are really quite good and moving that I could write down and enjoy.
But let's take just that sentence. It's not even a sentence. That fragment, this suitcase, the saddest object in the world.
Yeah.
Don't we want to know why? What makes it so?
Yeah.
Why is it an adventure?
Yeah.
Well, kind of, yeah. I want to know.
And
Is there regret? Is there regret in this poem?
Right in the middle of the poem. We have no idea what that. We know what the sentence means. It's hyperbolic. How can a suitcase be the saddest object in the whole world?
Is the suitcase like our memory? Carrying sad objects, especially exits?
Might be.
Leave takings?
It could be, but I think it could literally be a suitcase. Linda, without saying too much, we had a friend arrive on our doorstep recently, having been asked to leave home.
Oh.
And that bag that she carried in was the saddest object I'd seen.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when you see homeless folks on the sidewalk and they got a grocery cart and you're like, dang, what would I put in my grocery cart? If I had no home and I was kicked out, what are the things that I would want to guard with my life and could only fit in a grocery cart? Good gosh,
I'm blanking on his first name. You remember O'Brien's, the things they carried, the book he wrote about Vietnam?
Mm-hmm.
And the title referred to what everyone chose to carry with them.
Yeah.
How that selection was made. Because it was this extreme situation where you had to make choices about what you were willing to carry with you. Because you could only carry so much. I mean, that concept is so moving for me because I understand the context.
Yeah.
It's an image that we've seen often. We see later the photograph that's been folded and unfolded so often that it can barely stay together. But it was a picture of the baby left at home, or a flower carefully waxed in a piece of paper that stayed in the soldier's pocket. Yeah.
Wow. I get emotional just I've been trying for the last 2 years or so to put together earthquake backpacks because we're an earthquake country, right? And I think I'm going to have to get a copy of the birth certificate, and a copy of all these essential identification documents. But, some of my favorite pieces of art, that's not practical to put in your earthquake backpack, your emergency backpack. Or
nope.
It's really interesting, we make little nests for ourselves, don't we?
Absolutely.
Goodness. I have a question for the group. How do you feel about the word provisionally? Why is it fretful?
I feel it's fretful.
That's cheating, Ron.
As she told
Tell us more.
Because it promotes insecurity. It's a visa, but it's provisional. So therefore it's impermanent. It's probably going to end. There's no security in it. I'd fret about that. Right along with you, Ron.
Well, is it saying she can't go back?
Or the time might end, or
Is granted.
It's saying that she can't plan definitely. That
Right.
she can't make definite plans, and that's why it's dreadful. Whatever the other set of feelings are about this exit, the future is uncertain.
I think, yeah.
What it said.
and like the future always is, it's in someone else's hands. The uncertainty. Someone else is going to make a decision. Someone else is going to make a new rule. Someone else is going to say, now we all mask. It's out of your hands.
She's on a timetable. She's on a time scale. She has to do whatever she needs to do next before her visa expires. Is that accurate?
That would be true of a visa.
Yeah, that's how normal visas work. But what about hypothetical visas?
But think of the line right before it, except it is your street you are leaving. Your street, that's solidity, that's home, that's your possession. And now you are without that security and possession. That makes it even more poignant for me. Gosh, am I going to like this poem?
Oh, dang it, I fell in love.
Well, this is interesting because I felt like I understood that little section of the poem. The door opens to a street like in the movies, clean of people, of cats. It's an image that we can all respond to, the empty street. Except it's not just this generic street, it's your street.
Yeah.
It's the place where you've lived and the context you've been
Stepping out on Straight Street. Yep.
So that makes it different from being in the movies. The movies is staged.
It makes it real.
Yeah. And unscripted.
And that's a feeling that I can identify with. The number of times when you think, oh, shit, I've seen this happen. I've seen this in the movies, or I've seen this happen to other people. But I just stepped into it myself. And that's, no matter how many times you've read it in a book or seen it in a movie or seen it happen to somebody else, when all of a sudden it's you.
Yeah.
That's scary.
Yeah.
I wonder what Rita would think of this discussion.
She's smiling and nodding.
Oh my goodness. Wouldn't it be amazing if we got to have her on the show like we did with Rita?
Work on that, will you, Shannon?
I know. Well, with Rena, I called Rita, sorry, like we did with Rena. Oh my gosh, that would be how exciting. It'd be nice and casual. That's our show. We'd have these poets on and we'd be super cool and casual, and because that's how they open up. That's how they open up. You know?
Well, we've just had 45 minutes of discussion about something that none of us claims to understand.
But we like it.
We've moved the needle from to
Well, I think we can look back on this discussion and say, yeah, we were right. We don't understand it.
But we like it.
We got something out of it.
When you think about the first poem that we discussed by her, we all felt like we admired it and I believe understood it based on our discussion. And I mean, the discussion we just had is fine, but I don't feel any more that I grasp the poem any more fully. That's fine.
And just a reminder, the whole selection of poems that I've included in our packet, these were all poems that I Googled various sources. What are her top 10 poems? So this is one of those poems. It's in her top 10 of listed poems.
And we all know why.